Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. And what a week it has been. But I'm delighted to say we've got a fantastic crowd. What a panel. We've got the return of Alex Phillips, who we haven't seen for ages. Welcome back, Alex.
Great.
Looking very well. Will Geddes looking pretty good as well.
Well, I'll try my best,
Dobbs
Mike.
looking brilliant. And Russell Quirk just looking like Russell Quirk.
Just like me.
The hardest working man in show business. Well,
Yes.
this is what we're fighting for, of course. It is the one and only Plank. It didn't make the noise. Let's try again. Plank. There we go. Why don't you get us, knock us off?
Knock us off?
Knock us off from the start.
Don't really know
Knock
what
us
that
off from
means.
the start.
my job,
Talking
surely.
about knocking things off, surely
Yes.
it's about time we knocked off the BBC
Very
every
good.
time we tune into the news.
Very good.
No, but this is actually about entertainment. I'll save my news criticism for later.
Yes.
This is where the BBC, once again, they're making a period drama. This time it's all about the Battle of Hastings.
Yes.
And of course, back in 1066, when William the Conqueror led the Normans over the Channel to invade...
Famously invading Britain with fewer people than the illegal migrants that have
No
come
doubt.
in the last couple of
I'm
years.
I'm
right?
pretty sure. But
Good point.
unlike
Yeah.
unlike the illegal migrants, I would imagine that the Normans, which comes from Norsemen, they were Vikings
Yes.
who had in past invaded that part
Right.
of France and given assurances from the king, you can stay there, just keep out more Vikings.
Yeah,
well,
no.
they're the ones who came across. I'm pretty sure that they probably had a different look and feel
Probably.
to the small boat
Yes.
characters. But not according to the BBC.
No.
Because, of course, when it comes to BBC, the Normans have to, in part, be black.
Yes.
Well, they're
Well,
just
they've got to be
not.
diverse Normans, haven't they?
But they're not. The Normans weren't diverse.
No,
I
of course
really
they
don't
weren't.
think they were.
No.
And, you know, the thing is, we talk a lot, don't we, in this country about celebrating what immigration has
Yeah,
done. Well, you know,
right.
this was an actual invasion. But if we're going to talk about this in real terms, let us be realistic about it.
Right.
And let's point out that these people
Well, let's not
originally
rewrite
from
history, shall we?
Scandinavia,
Right.
and frankly, looked like me,
Yeah.
because I'm actually descended from Norse
you-
people.
are you?
Yeah,
Well, there we are.
Norman roots, me.
Well, technically
And
we all are, I
actually,
suppose, aren't
if
we?
you're a Spencer, a Taylor, a Humphrey, a Carr, a Bennett, a Barrett,
Yes.
you're also descended from the Norsemen.
Normans, yeah.
So why can't we celebrate
Alex,
that?
isn't there also a proportionality point here, right? So even if the BBC are kind of hung up on this whole kind of enforced diversity kind of equality thing, on the basis that the population of the UK that's black is about 8%,
Yeah.
why is it that 50% of all British TV adverts, for instance,
Right.
have got, or every advert has got 50%
Yeah.
of their people in it
Right.
are black? The same as this particular production that you're talking about, I bet it's not only 8% of the cast are black, I bet it's about 40 or 50%.
Right, but
So why do
the
we
thing is,
over-egg it
what
in
is
some
wrong?
exaggerated means of trying to force the point
Right.
upon us
Right.
that, guess what, there's black and Asian people
Right.
in
I
Britain.
kind of feel if it's sort of a total fiction and stuff, then anyone should be able to play any part. I mean, Shakespeare's time, we just had
Right.
men. Women
Right.
weren't allowed to act, so they were put on Fox and all the rest of it.
Right.
Fine, whatever. That is part of acting in the sort of world of fantasy and make-believe. But when you're making something in the prism of teaching people about history, which this is an entertainment
Right.
programme, but it also has that element to it, accuracy is important.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if someone turned around and said, oh, we're doing a big epic about Malcolm X and Liam Neeson
Right.
is going to play him?
Right.
I mean, it's just like...
Well, do you
stop
remember,
it.
was it not a couple of years ago when we made it on Plank of the Week with the Black Anne Boleyn? And there was a big to-do about it. It was a Channel 5 show, I think. I think we got the clip here. Have you got a clip of it?
The charge is treason and adultery.
Tell this to my daughter. Let your fear drive you to be bigger, louder. Fly close to the sun. The sky itself will not limit you.
This is my destiny.
That's Anne Boleyn, right? A real person. It's not just somebody who happens to
Fictitious.
live around
Yeah.
that time
Yeah.
and who happens to be married to somebody who happens
But it's
to
not
be...
it's not a
It's
Bridgeton, is it?
an actual
Yeah.
person.
It's not representative,
No,
it's made up.
it's not-
It's a political point.
It's like,
is
and
what
then when
is.
it says you don't know her story, well, I don't know that story because she wasn't black. Sorry.
I think the thing that's even more concerning is the fact that in terms of education, Alex, your point is absolutely right, and this Anne Boleyn thing, absolutely right, in terms of it being educational.
Yeah.
It runs completely contrary and in conflict
Yeah.
with obviously any books or any history teachers that are out there trying
Yeah.
to teach their students, their kids, obviously what
Right.
happened in the past.
Right.
And this is the problem. I think we're into this whole confusion now,
Yeah.
where children, I wouldn't be surprised at just getting totally confused
Yeah, of course.
about what is our history.
Because they won't know.
But can you
They've
imagine
got a
it was-
completely false idea of what history is
Right.
from watching
Yeah.
the telly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a shame that so many institutions that have been great at making TV in the past, they're more focused on having diversity in
Yeah.
the cast than actually just
Right.
having a good storyline.
But can you
and
imagine
making
if we
good
turned
TV?
it round the other way and let's say a profile of Nelson Mandela was played by Hugh Laurie?
Yeah.
There'd be absolute
Oh, there would
outrage.
be.
Exactly.
But of course,
Yeah.
what you're told,
Yeah.
if you criticise any of this, is that, well, what difference does it make? Anybody can play Anne Boleyn. You must be a racist if you don't think a black person
What
can
I
play her.
don't get is I don't think that people of ethnic minorities are sitting there going, oh my God, my life is so much better now.
No.
Thank goodness the
Yeah.
BBC cast half of Hastings as people of colour. That has just made life
I mean,
so
half
much
of
easier for
Hastings,
me.
even today, isn't 50% black, because it's a white, poor English seaside town. They've got a few illegal migrants
the
knocking
problem
about.
is,
but it's a very white town.
when you let human beings get on with getting on, having conversations at the water cooler and
Yeah.
down the pub, I think in the 21st century,
If they
a
can
lot
be
of
bothered to
Brits
come
are
into the
frankly
office.
colourblind.
Well, yeah.
They're just quite relaxed and quite happy, and they don't tend to have a racist
Yes.
bone in their body.
We've got a
but
picture.
when this stuff is forced on people,
Yeah.
it makes people feel resentful.
It does. It does. It
And the
actually
thing
drives
that
people.
the
It's more
TV
diverse,
companies
divisive.
often feel like they have to do this because now for some of the television awards, you're only eligible for a television
Right.
award for your programme if a certain percentage of your
Yeah.
cast and crew were ethnic minorities. And the BBC, they did an article of, is it time for the death of the all-white period drama, saying how problematic it is to make a TV show that's all-white, given it's
Yes.
from a period of history when people were mostly white. And they were pointing out the fact that basically you're all a bunch of racists because people complain about the fact that the colour of people's skin is different than in history in the show, more so than they do other historical
Yeah.
inaccuracies that are in the show.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, you can make up as much stuff as you like, but you better make sure you get some black people in there, otherwise it's going to be a real problem. The thing I don't get about Battle, though, and the Battle of Battle, as I call it, is that it happened in Battle. And it shouldn't really be called the Battle of Hastings. It should be called the Battle,
Battle of Battle.
And I know this because my family lived very nearby. And they've also got a place called Norman's Bay, which is bizarrely where the Normans landed. And I always go,
Funny that.
do you think they knew that was what it was called? When
I
they
don't know
landed?
that,
And people always go, don't be stupid. But anyway, Will, over to you.
Okay, I know we usually try and find a funny one, but this one isn't in my book. It's Keir Starmer, our new Prime Minister, who has pushed...
getting used to that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Take a while.
And it's kind of ironic, the fact that he was obviously the head of the CPS
Yes.
once upon a time.
He mentions that once in a while, doesn't he?
He does occasionally, and also his
part
dad,
of his-
dad was a toolmaker.
As part of his service,
But it's this initiative to release 40,000 prisoners
Yeah.
from our prison service. Now, there are some good points that have to be addressed here, but I don't think this is the solution.
Right.
Our
Well, surely
prisons-
letting people out that you've locked up isn't really a good idea.
Well, they're there for a reason, aren't they, Mike?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's 99% capacity, and by the time we hit August, we will have really maxed out the capacity in the prisons.
Yeah.
In terms of obviously those that are being interned. Now, the two things that they've stated they won't allow, and people are generally leaving after 50% of their time,
Right. Anyway.
their sentence being
Right.
served. They're moving that to 40% now. But they are excluding those that will be eligible for release, those that are guilty of violence and sex crimes.
Right.
Now, the one grey ambiguous area here, which is what concerns me, is those that are guilty of domestic abuse.
Yeah.
And those guilty of domestic abuse may be excluded from those in the categories of sex and violence.
Right. Well, you
as
mean they
offenders.
might be let out?
So they may be let out.
That doesn't sound like a very good idea,
No,
does it?
this doesn't sound like a great idea.
wouldn't
And personally, I think that there are so many different ways that you could deal with the prison population.
Yeah.
There are container ships that could be used. I mean, I
Right.
know there are a number of different ways you
put
could.
them on the Bibby Stockholm. They
Bibby
call that
Stockholm,
a floating prison.
great case in point.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But you could facilitate prisons in a low-cost way
Right.
that can cover all. And half the problem we've got is this cycle of disaster
Yeah.
between the CPS, and I've been up against the CPS with criminals that I've put forward
Yeah.
with a beautifully intact evidential package, and they've gone, nah, we're not going to
We
take
don't
it.
think we'll get-
We're not going to prosecute it.
We
We're not
don't
going
think
to
we
hit
get-
that
we'll get a
threshold.
conviction, yeah.
Exactly.
Wouldn't it be a good start to say that? I mean, 40,000, did you? Or
40,000.
Yeah, because
40,000.
the prison
That's
state
half
is
the
about
population.
100,000 or
Yeah.
88,000 or
85,000.
something.
Yeah, yeah.
But no,
So it's almost half.
wouldn't it be a good start to turn around and go, oh, this chunk of people are all foreigners. Why don't we deport them?
Yeah.
That's 10% of the population.
I know.
Yeah.
That
That's
would
about
be a great
that's about
start.
11,000.
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
They won't send them
So
home.
that would be your first start. Also, I don't remember this being in the Labour Party manifesto, guys. I mean,
No,
it was
funny
only
that, it's come out.
8 days ago.
Yeah.
8 days ago that we were talking about the manifesto. I know they didn't commit to much. They
Yeah.
were very ambiguous. This definitely wasn't there.
Yeah.
But they
But
weren't
But, the
other
thing,
thing-
but again, going into this
election at all.
cycle
Yeah.
between the CPS obviously not prosecuting, the prison service where they're going to let people out,
Right.
is the police who are at the front line trying to deal with these criminals and trying to put them away. And all too too often these individuals are being released. Now, we look at the category of offenders that are currently sort of being held, and OK, if they don't fall under violence and sex,
they reckon about 25 to 30 offences to get locked up in the first place.
Well, exactly.
Right?
So there's a vast majority of criminals who are out there still doing their thing. So, I think this is a disastrous start to his term as a Prime Minister.
Well, don't worry, though, because he's got a plan, right?
I'm sure he
does.
does.
What his plan is? The plan is to hire James Timpson, right?
Yeah.
Now, James Timpson's the guy that runs Timpson's. Let's have a look at what James Timpson once said about prison.
We have 85,000 people in prison. It's going to go up to 100,000 pretty soon. A third of them should definitely be there. There's another third in the middle, which probably shouldn't be there, but they need some other kind of state support. A lot of them have got massive mental health issues. They've been in prison, in and out of prison all their lives. And then there's another third, and there's a large proportion of women. Prison is a disaster for them.
So why do we continue?
Sorry, a disaster for them.
But why do we continue to believe
Now
that
you
the
tell
problem is one of what is good or bad for the criminal or the assailant?
Yeah.
The whole principle of justice and natural justice is that it's to protect society.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's not about them being rehabilitated.
No.
And dare I venture, before anybody else says it, it's a load of old cobblers.
It really is.
Yeah.
But you know
Well done.
what also, I have something to tell you about James Timpson, because, I mean, what sort of a man do you think you would trust? This guy, right? He takes people out of prison and he gives them jobs, teaching them how to make keys.
I know.
When you come in,
That's
there's a pretty
cool.
good chance that the key you're getting made
but
for your
I think-
house
no,
has been
look,
made by
in
some
defence-
lag,
in
right?
defence-
Who's made an extra copy for himself. He's taken your ID. He's gone, all right, hello.
In
And he's next
defence of,
he's round letting himself
No
in.
wonder the
No.
keys I get cut there never work.
Yeah, you go.
In defence of James Timpson,
But
he
his
actually
does.
has done great things. I'm going to defend him because he has done great things by being the first, I think, sort of high street shop to employ only ex-convicts.
Yes.
And actually,
Yeah,
I
but
think
they're
that
making
is
keys, though.
really remarkable. Yeah, well.
Oh, you're okay with that?
But,
Fine.
no,
Hang on,
I go to
Alex, we're really
Timpson's from
cynical.
my house.
They're
But
also cheaper to employ. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
They're cheaper.
Well, maybe, but I do actually think what he's done is a great thing. And he's also a Brexiteer. So there you are.
Yeah, that doesn't
it's not all
cover
bad.
Not all bad.
It doesn't cover everything, though.
That was
I
his
mean,
get out of jail free card.
That's, yeah, exactly
I see
right.
what you
But the
did.
other thing about Keir Starmer, and this is what I'd also
Yeah.
like to add in, is that I don't know whether you've watched him going over to Washington this
Oh,
week.
God,
I've been
it's
making a lot
embarrassing.
out of the fact that he's gone with his wife, right?
Yeah.
Because he didn't have to take his wife, and the reason I'm having to go at him about it is because you never saw her before when the election was taking place, because
Yeah.
he said, "Oh no, my family are all off limits. You know, we don't talk
Keep
about
them
them.
off, yeah.
Don't talk about my kids. Don't
Yeah.
talk about my wife. She's not part of the political
now she's in play.
process." Now she's in play, and worse than that, and I really have to say I feel very strongly about this, he's holding her hand as they go onto the plane.
Oh,
I mean, for
PDA.
God's sake, please. He's literally standing there, and there's another picture of them watching, some event over in Washington, D.C., and she's got her arm around him. I mean, it's like, come on, guys, what are you, 17 or something? He's the Prime Minister. He should be sitting there holding
He's trying
hands.
to show that he's got a heart.
This is my
Has he?
problem. But this is my problem.
Well,
It's
none of
all
us believe
staged.
that he does because he talks so
Yeah,
monotone.
but
He's
it's
had
all
some voice
staged.
coaching apparently, but it's
Yeah.
done bugger
No,
all.
but we obviously know he's compassionate because he wants to let everybody out of prison.
Yeah,
He doesn't have to
exactly.
hold someone's hand and tell us
Yeah.
anymore, does he?
That's the only thing that the Labour Party have bothered to do.
Right.
They promised that they were going to splash a load of money on everything. But what did
apart
what
from
did Rachel Reeves come out and say on the first day in office? She said, "I've had a look at the country's finances
Yes.
and there's not very much money left."
funny
I
that.
hate that line.
So she's going to use that as an excuse to
Even
do
though they have access.
absolutely
Yeah.
nothing.
You have been.
Yeah,
All
it's
these
worse than
people
we
in
thought.
these departments
Yeah.
have been the shadow cabinet. And do you know what the shadow cabinet do? They shadow the ministers.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
this absolute BS about, I didn't know what the country's finance. What,
Yeah.
Were you just like playing snake on
They
your
have
phone the
unfettered
whole time you were
access to
sitting
the
in the
books.
Treasury
They have unfettered
alongside
access to the
Jeremy
books.
Hunt?
Yeah.
It's an excuse to raise taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolute BS.
It is.
Just stand by. We're going to see it.
Ready? We've
Capital
seen it all
gains,
before.
stamp duty,
Yeah.
it's all coming in.
Absolute
Here we go
cobblers.
again.
Yep.
Chloe, over to you. More Labour Party
Speaking of
nominations.
Labour,
Yes.
and that clown show, is
Yeah.
Anneliese Dodds,
Oh.
who is our new Women and Equalities
Yes.
Minister. And turns out that the Women and Equalities Minister doesn't actually really know what a woman is.
No.
So good old
Disappointing, isn't it?
Or equality.
Disappointing.
Shocked. I'm
Good
just so
old, good
shocked.
old J.K. Rowling, who has done a lot
Right.
for women over the past couple of
She's
years.
like a one-woman opposition party.
Yeah.
I know, you know,
Brilliant.
she should run, she should be Prime
Yeah.
Minister. But she has dug up the transcript from a BBC Women's Hour
Transcript,
episode.
see what you did there.
From 2022, where Anneliese Dodds was asked what a woman is, and she goes, well, actually, there are lots of different legal definitions
Yes.
of what a woman is. And then she gets pressed again. She says, Well, I think it really depends on the context.
I mean, unbelievable, isn't it?
Depends on the context.
Right.
This is your new Women and Equalities Minister. And who does she have with her in the cabinet? She's got David Lammy, who thinks that men can just grow a cervix.
Yes, that was a good one.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Didn't hear that one.
Yeah.
And the
Really?
Labour Party, they're saying that they need to make the process to become legally recognised as a woman if you're a man, or vice versa. They need to make it easier because it's so horrible and mean that we make them show that they have been living as a different gender for 2 years before we give them a gender recognition
I'm still not even
certificate.
sure what
So
that
now they're
means.
saying just click of the fingers, you say you're a different gender, and there you go, legally recognised.
But this is it. They said and therefore, so you get the gender recognition certificate quicker under Labour's policy. You also need to have the gender recognition certificate to get into women's spaces.
Right.
But no one actually tells you how you get this gender recognition certificate other than just what.
Do you not go to the gender recognition shop for it?
But then it's illegal to ask someone to show their gender recognition certificate.
Next to Simpson.
Brilliant.
So where does this leave us? What it leaves us with is weirdos like Fred West. Put it on a frock and
How
go
do we get
into
to Fred
changing
West?
rooms. He's dead,
How
I
did
know.
Fred
No,
come
no.
in?
How do we get to Fred West?
I'll tell you how we
Just
get
'cause you're
got
from
to
Gloucester.
Fred West.
I mean,
yeah,
you're always
exactly.
dropping him in.
No, I'll tell you how we got to him. Because when you have a situation where you can't ask someone for their gender recognition certificate and it's easy to get one anyway, then the people who are going to, really max out on that are going to be the odd ones, the sort of weirdo perverts who want to get into women's changing rooms.
Yeah, exactly right. Absolutely incredible. Well, one of the other guys, apparently, who purports to believe all this nonsense as well, is Clive Lewis, who you might remember this week was sworn in, but said he refused to be sworn in properly because he basically didn't believe in the swearing-in process. Let's have a look.
Straight to the tower for this one.
I take this oath under protest and in the hope that one day my fellow citizens will democratically decide to live in a republic.
What an absolute plank.
Why does he
This is
bounce
also,
up
do you
and
remember this
down
guy?
when he talks?
Deadbeat.
He bounces
Yeah,
up
he's
and down
bouncing up
with
and down.
this
He also, you
talk.
might remember, he got into a bit of trouble a few years back because he was at some Labour Party function, which I think took place during Labour Party conference week, when everybody goes mad. And he's on stage, and some woman is invited up to the stage. I can't remember what the context of it was, unfortunately. And he says to her, "On your knees, bitch."
What?
And everyone's going, "Sorry?" I mean, it was supposed to be a funny kind of skit that they were doing, but people were like, even Russell Quirk looked shocked.
No, but I also remember that he's the man that mocked suicide.
That's right.
In the House of Commons,
because he did
by
that thing
pretending
when
to blow his
putting
head
the gun
off
in his mouth.
in
Really?
the House of Commons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice.
So what a lovely guy. I would venture actually
Guy
that if
sounds
you
familiar.
don't want to take the prescribed oath as a member of Parliament,
You
you
can't
are not
represent.
a member of
Yeah,
Parliament.
you're not.
No, I agree.
So he
I
should
agree.
not be sitting in that Parliament.
No.
Well, it's like Sinn Féin. Do you
outrageous...
remember Sinn Féin wouldn't take their seat?
No,
But what
exactly.
an
Yeah.
outrageous
And so
time.
they just didn't turn up.
Yeah.
What an outrageous time to make a political statement, rather than just suck it up. And actually, if you don't want to take the oath, don't be a member of Parliament. Simple as that.
Now, you can tell that it's the first week of Labour government because you've got some more Labour rights that you want to put forward.
I'm afraid the theme continues.
I mean, it might just have to be an aggregate plank of the week for Labour at this rate.
Yeah. So my nominations are joint nominations, really. Dawn Butler and David Lammy, who obviously are now part of the Labour government. Within seconds...
That's really going to be hard to get
Within
used to.
seconds of them becoming part of that government, they both played the race card. I mean, seriously. So as if Britain is not divided enough, what we don't need is members of the government taking every opportunity, as particularly the Foreign Secretary, which I think is the third most senior and powerful position in Britain. He got 15 words into his first address on video before he played the race card. And basically it went something like this, which is, "I'm honoured to be standing in front of you as Foreign Secretary, as a descendant of enslaved people." And you think, number one,
I mean, he is
300
from
years ago,
Tottenham.
mate.
That's fair.
Well, yeah, fair enough.
It's not very nice.
Tottenham's rough, mate.
Yes,
Yeah.
rough.
He was in the Labour
Rough
Party under
boots.
Corbyn.
Yeah, it must be all those chicken
Actually,
shops
that's
in
true.
Tottenham enslaving him, But 300 years ago, get over the slavery thing.
Right.
Sorry,
Oh,
I know
it's
it's an
so
unpopular
boring.
thing to say, get over it. But also, does he not
I love
realise,
that.
and you
Just
and I,
get
Chloe,
over it. Get over the slavery.
No, because...
No, it's great, though.
but seriously,
True.
was he affected by slavery? No. Was his parents? No. Were his grandparents? No.
No.
But you and I had this conversation earlier on before we came on as well. In that, has he not noticed the previous cabinet, the Conservative cabinet, was quite diverse?
Yes, it
we
was.
had people like James Cleverly and Rishi
That's
Sunak
right.
and Alok Sharma and Nadeem Zahawi.
Well,
Shall I
the
go
Labour-
on?
the
He's
Labour-
standing
Suella
there, David
Braverman,
Lammy,
Priti Patel.
as
Yeah.
if this is the first time a black person's been in the cabinet.
Yeah.
What a
Yeah.
muppet. And then Dawn Butler caps it all by
Oh, she always does.
taking a selfie, again, day one of the Labour government, with a load of her colleagues behind her that happen to be black. And what
there
does
it
she
is
say?
now.
let's celebrate the melanin.
Right.
Give it up, Labour.
Oh, really?
Give it up, Dawn Butler. For goodness sake, we don't want to hear this diverse rubbish.
Right.
Get on with governing.
Just do your job.
Stop being so diverse.
Nobody's pointing at you and saying, oh, look, isn't it amazing? There's somebody who isn't white in Parliament.
It
nobody
is in
cares.
itself divisive.
Right, it is.
Can you imagine if a white MP took a picture with a bunch of their white MP mates and said, celebrate the whiteness or celebrate the lack of melanin? I think everyone would say that is just obviously racist. But if a black person does it, no problem.
Do you know what I'm
whatsoever.
going to do? I'm going to get elected to that Parliament and I'm going to stand there with the Taylors and the Spencers and I'm going to be like, celebrate the North.
Yes, there you go.
Yes.
Very good.
Woo!
Yeah,
Scandies.
Vikings are us.
We're back.
Now, David Lammy, of course, is famous for many things, including this particular clip, which you might have seen before.
If it feels like neighbourhood policing has vanished, it's not around you. We haven't seen a police while I've been here, and I've been here for a little while now.
Someone should have gone to Specsavers.
It's a bit like old Humsy Useless falling off the scooter.
But the great thing is,
can we have that video clip again? No context whatsoever.
But for shows like this is going to continue every week.
Right.
But the problem I've got with this is actually, frankly, quite dangerous. When you look back at some of the things that David Lammy has said in tweets, about white people's tears, and it's strong
He called
stuff.
Brexiteers Nazis,
And did you notice that basically, not even during this election campaign, but a long time before then, that man has been locked in a broom cupboard somewhere.
Yeah.
You haven't heard a peep out of him.
Because a lot of people said that he wasn't going to get that job because they thought he wasn't ready for it, right? So maybe they said to him, keep your mouth shut and you'll get it.
No, they've done that
That's
deliberately.
exactly what they did.
We've had an invasion of Ukraine. We've got what's going on in Gaza. He was shadow foreign secretary. Not a peep from him.
No.
Now he's foreign secretary. And have the media done any cross-examination, held him accountable for his opinions, asked him what he plans to do in that role? No. People went and
he
voted
wrote an
blindly
essay
in this
on
election.
his belief in what he calls progressive realism foreign policy, and it's all very flowery and makes no sense.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
Well, let's see how he gets on when he meets President Trump, when President Trump is elected in November, because he will be our point man on behalf of Britain.
What did he call President Trump?
He called him a narcissist. He called him a cheat,
I really
a
hope
liar.
that
That's going to be a really interesting meeting.
Yeah,
I think.
really interesting. I don't think he's even gone to Washington. Keir Starmer decided to take his wife instead.
Oh, right.
I can't really blame him.
Back in the broom cupboard.
Yeah, no. Get back, David Lammy. You can go to Germany. You got sent to Germany to talk to the EU. Great luck for that one. Anyway, listen, more coming up. Next, we're going to be talking about some conspiracy theories, and also we're going to be talking about some more Labour MPs, believe it or not. This is Plank of the Week. We're back, and I'm afraid, I know that you're probably going to think I've gone mad here, but I'm going to actually nominate the weather as my first nomination.
No, I think that's
the weather,
merited.
quite frankly, is a disgrace.
It is
has been completely and utterly ludicrous.
Why are you hating things that are very British?
Well, it's not that British, because I seem to remember that, June and July in my sort of youth were beautiful summer months. And, usually there was a bit of rain during Wimbledon fortnight, because it always rains during Wimbledon fortnight. Yeah. But this year, Wimbledon fortnight is not even over yet, and we've already had something like a month's worth of rain. And, of course, all the climate nutters are going, oh, it's because of climate change. Well, no, it's not because of climate change, because this time last year, it was about 40 degrees. Everyone was walking around sweating.
Exactly.
People couldn't go to sleep at night. So apparently we're going to get some kind of a heat wave, which we keep being told we're going to get in about 3 days.
Oh,
That's what they keep saying.
What, 4 a day?
But it's only going to be sort of 23, 24 degrees.
And it's not Jim Dale that's told us this, is it?
No, God, no.
Please
don't mention that man's name on this show. He's banned from every show that I ever do because he's such a plank, and he's not even a meteorologist either, by the way.
I know.
But no, the weather has been awful.
It has been terrible.
When you
and
wake
also,
up,
Alex, I have to correct you. I mean, in terms of being British, we discuss the weather. We can complain about it.
That is true. We love
that is true.
We love complaining about it.
I mean, funny enough, as I was coming into the studio to do the show today, it started to warm up a little bit out there, and you can see that people are already going.
But sure enough, it probably poured down
It's a bit hot.
But the best thing is it's going to be really lovely weather on Saturday.
Yes.
But tomorrow's going to be raining, apparently.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
You need to be like the Normans and bring it over from
Enough
France.
with the Normans already.
Listen, you spent a month in France.
That's why you can actually see me compared to this jacket.
Norman crazy.
She has, hasn't she? I'm going to get her a little helmet with horns.
Norman! But no, seriously, I mean, if you think back to just earlier in the year, back in sort of middle of June, which is normally meant to be 20-something, I remember coming out one morning to get into a car, and it was literally like there was frost practically.
I know people who put their central
really
heating
cold.
back on again. I mean, that's how depressing it is.
I went to Wimbledon on Tuesday,
Very
and
nice.
I queued up from 5:30 in the morning to get my cheapskate
yeah.
grounds pass so I
Yes.
could watch the matches outside, get in, not a single game played outside the whole day because it literally poured down
Right.
the entire day. My phone told me it wasn't going to rain until 5 p.m. Absolute
That's
rubbish.
why you mustn't believe these phone apps.
Yeah.
because
So
I'm
we
the
all
same.
just stood there, hiding under any cover we could find, eating a
Yeah.
pizza out of a soggy pizza butt,
And having hypothermia.
hoping that the courts might open, but no.
So you saw
nothing.
no tennis at all?
I may have managed to sneak in on my mother's ticket.
I see.
Possibly.
You know, if it wasn't for the Great British weather, we wouldn't have done things like invent the telephone and the television
umbrella.
and the internet
But
and
hang
the
on.
computer and all these indoor things that enable us to stay connected.
Well,
all
according-
British inventions, because we can't leave the house because
According
it's blizzarding.
to Novak Djokovic,
Maybe.
it's now an indoor tournament Wimbledon because every time he plays, the roof's shut.
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
true.
But I mean, the point is, the other thing that's really annoying me is that every time I have to go anywhere, I now don't know whether to take a coat and an umbrella, or just an umbrella, or just a coat. And I've literally got 5 umbrellas. You know, I've got one that I leave in the office, I've got one in the car, I've got 2 hanging up at home, I've got one somewhere. You know, everywhere I go, you know, you come out of the tube station and it's pouring.
Yeah.
And they didn't say it was going to be raining. And that's what I'm fed up with.
Yeah, I think it's time to move.
Yeah,
France.
we've got a little clip to show you, actually. This is of some people enjoying the weather. Stay at my umbrella.
What's the point of this? It's got to be the worst summer I've ever had. I'm pissed off.
Love the way he boots it.
No, this is a guy sitting outside in his backyard. You
Good
know,
lad.
proud to be British.
That's
I mean,
it.
because no matter what, if you're going to have a barbecue...
You know the best thing I heard the other day was, you know, when you see people with a plastic bag over their head?
Yeah.
That's otherwise known as a scumbrella.
And there's a umbrella.
Do you guys remember when we first started coming out of lockdown and one of the first things we had the freedom to do was to sit outside a pub in groups of 6?
Yes.
But that week that it happened and we got that new freedom, it was absolutely chucking it down. And
Right.
but everyone wanted to go to the pub. They were desperate. So everyone on, like, we saw videos everywhere. People
All the news
outside
channels were loving
drinking
it,
beer
weren't
with
they?
umbrellas, being drenched.
No, you should have tried being a smoker in Scotland. You know,
If I was Home
you had to
Secretary-
go outside the pub. It was always pouring.
If I was Home Secretary, I'd look at all that money we've given to France and I'd say, how about erect a big screen in Calais and show a medley of those videos?
Yes.
A nice montage of the Great British Summer, and they'd all think twice, wouldn't
Maybe
they, about
they would.
getting on a
That's a
small
good idea.
boat?
Maybe they would.
actually.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Alex, over to you. Just some conspiracy theorists.
Well, I know, yeah. So it's one of the best from the election, frankly. But this is the idea that Reform UK had a load of fake candidates, that they had actually had AI-generated candidates.
Right. Oh,
These
yeah.
were
Like people
not
that
just
just didn't
paper
exist.
candidates,
Right.
because look, paper candidates have always existed in elections where someone says, right, I'll pay the deposit, I'll put my name down,
Right.
probably ain't going to win, but I'll,
Right.
add my name to the list so someone can vote for the party.
Yes.
That's been going on for ages.
real people.
But some journalists have been saying that these people didn't exist at all.
Did you say journalisers?
It's my new thing, by the
That's
way.
an
It's my new
interesting word.
portmanteau.
Okay,
I'm working on it. I'm not sure it's
Portmanteau
gonna...
as well. Listen to this.
Yeah.
It's gone all
It's all getting
French.
too sophisticated,
I
this
know.
programme.
All right, Norman,
I
carry
know,
on.
what's up? But a lot of people sort of said this was the case, and everyone picked it up and
Right.
copied it. And it turns out it's not. These people having to come out and do little Zoom calls and say I
Right.
exist. Hi, here's a video.
Hang on, there's that one particular
I'm
member of
alive.
the Reform
There is.
Party who had that picture, which they said,
His
okay,
name's
this guy.
Mark Matlock. Let's have a
Mark
look at
Matlock,
it.
that's the
We've
fella.
got the picture
Yeah.
here. There he is. See, the one on the left does not look much like the one on the
No,
right.
Mark on the right's been having a good time out,
Yeah.
I think.
He looks like the guy from The Hangover on the right, doesn't
I
he?
think the guy on the
In
right
film.
ate Mark Matlock.
And the guy
So
on
I
the left
believe
looks
he-
like his son.
I believe he airbrushed it a bit. He says that
A
he was
bit.
editing the colour of his tie, but I think he's done a little bit of skin smoothing as well,
I
and
think-
hence it looks a
Yeah,
little
his hair
AI
looks a bit
generated.
thicker as well on
Yeah.
top.
Yeah,
doesn't
he's
it?
used a
Yeah.
10-year-old picture on the left. On the right, I think it's John Candy.
I think that's his Tinder profile, don't you?
But one thing that I would say about this election campaign, I've never seen so-called journalism fall to the lowest possible standards. I mean, I haven't. We were talking earlier about the Labour Party not scrutinised at all. Then we had Ed Davey running around looking like he's in Takeshi's castle.
Right.
No one asked him what he planned to do as as leader of the Lib Dems. No, he's just wonderful. Waitrose
Yeah.
women thinks he's great because there he is doing water aerobics.
But do you know why he was
Grow
doing all
up.
that? It was so that nobody could ask him about the post office scandal. Because while he's on a
Exactly.
roller coaster,
Yeah.
he can't really sit there with a microphone and say,
But
why
there-
didn't you do anything about the scandal
But then
at the
we've
post
got
office?
this other big issue, which is this canvasser for reform.
Yeah.
Now, they say this guy is an actor. Well, he is an actor by profession. Whether or not he was put in
Oh,
place
this is the
as
Channel
a
4 thing,
stooge...
right?
Look,
Yeah.
I don't
Oh,
know.
yeah.
It's
That
been
looked like a
reported to the
setup,
police, and
to be
this is
honest.
a very serious allegation.
It
The police
disappeared very quickly,
must,
didn't it, that story?
They must look
As
into
did his
it.
actor
no,
profile.
it didn't. This is the thing, it didn't disappear that quickly because Channel 4, decided that only Reform UK needed to have undercover filming
Yes.
done, which they did to the Brexit Party as well. No other party,
Yeah.
just Reform UK. Is that partisan?
Yeah.
So first of all, they do this. Then they find a guy who is a canvasser, right? This guy who no one seems to know puts leaflets in letterboxes, and then he says the P word, and then that means the whole party's racist. This is a bit like saying that, you know, a terrorist shops in Sainsbury's, therefore Sainsbury's is Hamas.
Right.
You know, it's ridiculous.
Well, let's have a look at Richard Tice. This is him talking about the Matlock story.
Why not just look back to the night of the election when the guy was in hospital?
You just told me to look at his Twitter feed.
Yeah,
so that's
you clearly
exactly
didn't look
what I
back
did.
to the night of the election when he was in hospital with pneumonia.
Yeah, I have looked at that.
there you
actually.
are.
Unfortunately, I will not be attending the count tonight as I have pneumonia.
So a guy who's got pneumonia,
Yeah.
right, who's tweeted that, all of a sudden the lefties and the libs, they're all saying he's not a real... I mean, honestly, this is pathetic.
I mean, of course, there's now another story doing the rounds, and I think it emanates from those Wallies at Byline Times, who claim that the reason that all of these various different fake and phantom candidates came out is because you get money every time you put a candidate into the race. And so therefore, which is complete and utter bullshit.
No, you have to pay to enter.
You have to pay to enter, and then use your deposit.
Right. But my favourite reform story, I have to say this, and it came out just a bit before the actual election. It came out in April, which was when reform was sort of trying to make sure that all of the candidates that they had selected for any particular by-election or whatever were actually making sure they were doing enough work and making sure they were canvassing. And they had a go at this one particular guy, and they wrote to him, Tommy Corkwell, his name was, a volunteer for the RNLI, to say, why are you not working hard enough for the reform? Why are you not doing your job? It turned out he was dead. Because unfortunately...
Not a good enough excuse,
Unfortunately,
Mike.
no. Unfortunately, very shortly after he was selected, he had a heart attack and passed away. Nobody knew.
Oh, no. And you can't take it off the ballot paper.
That's pretty sad.
You can't take it off the ballot paper.
It's a new party. It doesn't have branches. It doesn't have all the, the activists from many years, like local councils and all the rest, like the legacy parties have. It's going to have to get those things and get them quick.
Yeah. Will, over to you.
Yes,
Got another Labour MP, apparently.
It's a lovely Labour MP. and this one's a particular special one.
Absolutely right.
The youngest MP, Labour MP, and MP ever, Sam Carling.
Yes.
Bless his little heart. So, little Sam, he's obviously very smart. He's obviously a smart kid.
He's got quite a strange shaped head.
I'd say when you say the hair. Is it the hair or the head?
Looks like a Mekon with hair.
Let's not be mean.
He looks like something out one of the old
No.
Tefal adverts. Do you remember that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you're a savage
listen,
bunch,
how you look
aren't
when you go to the Hall of Mirrors.
Or looking at yourself in the back of the spoon.
People will go.
But anyway, no, it's all very
who
cruel.
do you think he looks like?
He's clearly very intelligent if he's got such a big brain in there.
Yeah. Should we? Well, I'll just look at the clip. That's enough of this slagging him off. All right.
Some of the criticisms of MPs is that they are, many of them don't have real-world experience. You've touched on some of it there, but at 22, can you really offer real-world experience and to bring that to the House of Commons?
Well, I have a lot of experience that older members of Parliament won't. I always get a little bit frustrated when people mention life experience because no one has yet been able to explain to me why being older makes you better at the job.
We've got more experience, I think that's why.
But what kind of experience?
Well, by definition, over the years, you gain more experiences, don't you?
But what kind of experience, right?
It's got everything, this show.
It's got everything.
Just him, actually.
Biology and everything.
He's got zero experience.
Right.
And in terms of experience, yes, there's lots of things we accrue. When we're 22 years old, we think we're bulletproof and we think we know everything.
Yeah.
But what I find is really irritating is the lack of humility, the lack of modesty
Yeah,
to
but
actually
see,
say,
again-
you know what, I'm moving forward. And so I have
But I
young
don't
kids
have
who
a
come
problem-
to
honestly
me
don't have a problem
asking
with
to be
that,
in my world, and they all lean to me for advice. And what we're not seeing with this kid is the same. It's I know it all, and what's some, and there's lots of things that I know that older MPs won't know. He may be more wired into the younger community,
Might be, which is no bad thing. And one of the things that he did say in that interview was that actually I know a lot more about how difficult it is to get on the housing ladder because a lot of young people are in my position and they can't.
It's not just him. What I found looking at Twitter, as I love to do while sitting in the bath over the last few days, the amount of Labour MPs, and it's largely Labour, who are all there going into Parliament, fresh out of, their youth club, going like,
Yeah.
look at me, first day in Westminster.
Yeah.
Hang on, like Dawn Butler.
I don't think she's that young. No, but there's a whole load of young intake new MPs now, and I just, I do kind of feel like get a bit seasoned before
Alex,
you
did
go
you see
into
the number
Parliament.
that seemed to have discovered trains for the first time that were tweeting about their train experience? I mean, there were loads and loads
that
of them.
was a really young one, wasn't he?
Yeah,
look at me on the train.
Yeah, look at me on the train. And someone said that they got a round of applause from the platform. It's probably because they were leaving.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I I just think, you know, bring in your fresh blood, bring in young blood, but bring in young blood that's respectful and understanding that there's a heck of a lot to learn and it's a brutal, savage, nasty world out there. And you can't come in. I mean, he's evidently an academic. He's obviously a very smart kid.
He went to Cambridge.
He went to Cambridge, there you go. But I mean, but then again, my feeling on academics, it's a bit like learning to drive a car from a book.
Exactly right. Coming up next, we're going to be talking about somebody that I've never heard of, but Chloe has, and maybe a few other people have as well. And also, Russell's going to have something about the electoral system. Sounds very, very important. This is Plank of the Week. Back after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. So, Chloe, Tilly Fitzgerald.
Tilly Fitzgerald.
Yes.
She's a young, lovely lefty who likes all kinds of diversity except for diversity of thought, of course. Now, this is a girl who has a social media page called Tilly Loves Books, and she does book reviews and whatnot. And she used to work at... she's very sad here, and I'll tell you why. It's because she was fired from Waterstones after she said on her TikTok that she was going to enjoy ripping up and putting in the bin the books of a gender-critical author.
Oh, dear.
Now, this is an author who she doesn't actually write about gender ideology and whatnot. She's just got a bunch of fiction novels, but she is supporting this new publishing agency that's coming out called Scene that helps gender-critical authors. She's found out that this author is going to be a part of it, so she's gone on TikTok and her social media and said, oh, well, I'll enjoy ripping up your books and putting them in the bin then. Waterstones, good on Waterstones, standing up and saying, not having any of that, that's against our policy, you're fired.
And the implication was that it was Waterstones stock that she was going to rip up, presumably.
Well, yes, now she is trying to backpedal and say, oh, no, I was just talking about my private book collection. Really? I bet she hasn't got
but she wouldn't own those books anyway.
I doubt that she has any of those books on her shelf.
And presumably the reason why this particular publishing house has been started up is because so many of these gender-critical authors now can't get published because all the publishing houses have gone woke.
Someone to stand up for them. That's why this is coming about, because of girls like this. Now, she's playing the victim, crying on TikTok, saying, Waterstones are so mean. And do you know what she said? She said roughly along the lines of, my views are really clear. I just want everyone to be able to be who they want and be left alone, really, unless they disagree with you.
Exactly. Has JK come out yet and said anything?
Not yet, I don't think, but I'm sure she will be.
This is her basically at work at Waterstones tearing up some cardboard.
Tearing up cardboard, I don't think she knows what a book is then.
No.
I mean, it's not a very good one by the looks of it.
What sort of a TikTok influencer?
It's what I wrote.
But what sort of TikTok influencer is she? I mean, a lot of people follow her. Is she very well known?
She's got 90k apparently.
Yeah,
really?
So that's not bad, I suppose, but it's not
some
massive,
people like her content.
She's not exactly Kim Kardashian.
Tearing up cardboard boxes.
No. So I guess she's looking for another job.
Yeah. Hasn't the world been quite critical?
Keir Starmer will give her a job.
Maybe she can be another Women and Equalities Minister.
Hasn't the world in the past been quite critical of those that want to kind of burn books? I mean, that wasn't a good thing in the 1930s.
No. I think it's something that Hitler did, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I mean,
in this instance, it seems to be okay.
It's a bit like when the Beatles backlash started in America, when they all decided that, they were anti-Christian, do you remember? And they all started burning the Beatles records, back in the sort of late 60s.
Brilliant.
The God Squad and, the people who were down in southern Baptist town territory.
They did that with Elvis as well.
They did, because he was also the spawn of the devil, as you would probably know. Russell, over to you.
Yeah, so my second nomination, Mike, is the UK electoral system. And I think if the election that was fought last week tells us anything, it's that the electoral system in the UK is well and truly broken.
Yes.
The anomalies are quite unbelievable in terms of vote share, as in number of votes, percentage, and how that then translates into seats. So to give you an idea, Reform, 4 million votes, 5 seats. Liberal Democrats, 3.5 million votes, 72 seats.
I don't get that.
I don't understand.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah. The Labour Party won with a so-called landslide with a lower share of the vote than previously.
Than Jeremy Corbyn
got a higher share of the vote.
Really?
So everyone's applauding this whole kind of Labour landslide thing. It's really not, actually. Before you even start delving into the fact that a lot of people that voted Labour that were Conservatives
their vote actually went down
slightly. As a protest. Yeah, indeed. So huge anomalies. If you actually look at an element, or I guess a version of what we would call proportional representation, which I don't think you can fail to agree with the argument that proportional representation is logical and fair. Reform would have got 91 parliamentary seats. So surely it's time now for the electoral system, bearing in mind there's over 100 countries of the world that use some form of proportional representation. The fact that 4 million people voted for reform and there are only 5 representatives, so the amount of voters per representative is way disproportionate to Labour, the Conservatives and so on. The Greens, by the way, just for balance, also suffered. You know, they should have had 70 MPs based on the fact that they got 7% of the vote. Something like that. So I think it's time that we had a serious review. The problem is none of these turkeys in power now are going to vote for Christmas.
No, of course they're not.
No.
I mean, because Keir Starmer was making a lot of noise about going into proportional representation in some way, shape or form, you know, after the election. But of course, he hasn't said anything about it since.
I'm sure he'll do another flip-flop on that
he
one.
will.
Back in the day, I think Sir Keir Starmer thought that actually if there's proportional representation, then Labour would always be propped up by Lib Dems, Greens, Plaid, SNP, whoever, and therefore have, you know, a hegemony in power.
And ironically,
but now it doesn't suit that narrative.
That match their vote to seats. They got about 12% of the vote, 11% of the seats. But for the smaller parties, those that are, you know, up and coming and so on, and haven't, as you said, Alex, haven't got the network and the community and so on, what chance have they got of actually showing proper representation by way of votes from the people if we have this skewed, unfair system?
The problem is, though, whenever you talk about proportional representation, I just tell you about Scotland. And when you go to Scotland and you see how their Scottish Parliament is made up, the reason it all went horribly wrong up there for Nicola Sturgeon is because they had to go into coalition with the Greens. And the Greens were the nutty kind of trans ideologist types, and it was because of that they completely destroyed their own party.
What I would, because a lot of people say, oh, well, proportional representation, you have constant coalitions. What I'd say is a Conservative Party were a constant coalition, which is what tore them apart. But the problem is, at least when you have a coalition, you have something called supply and demand, which is one party says, I'm not going to vote for the budget unless you also vote for this.
But that's what happened in Scotland.
So it
and then
has
the Green,
but
that's what happened, because then the Green Party got all this gender ideology nonsense into law.
I agree, but that is what people voted for, so that people can vote around the next time.
No, they didn't. That's the point, because the Greens would never have been in power were it not for
Greens
proportional
only had something,
representation.
1% vote share, yet had a huge sway on the policy. And it's because of reasons like that I've been very hesitant about PR for years. But then I look at the result, it's the most disproportionate result in our country's history, and see
it's illogical.
23,000 votes to get a seat for Labour versus, I think it's 830,000 or 820,000 for a seat for Reform. I mean, there's no way that you can look at that and say that's fair.
At targeting seats, because that's what the Lib Dems
we do need a conversation about changing the system. Ironically, though, I've been over in France. I know. Have you heard that one yet?
I didn't know that.
I've been over in France.
Have you been in France recently?
I have. Because I wasn't allowed to play. I wasn't allowed to play in the election over here. So I was excommunicated to France, where, guess what? They had an election. So I didn't escape the politics.
That kind of went wrong, didn't it?
Not one.
Well, no, this is what's interesting. So, you know, all the sort of establishment gangs together to try and stop Rassemblement, and it worked. Under first past the post, if that's what they had in France, Rassemblement would have swept the floor. So it's kind of funny that it's proportional representation in France has sort of
it's like
managed
everybody
to squeeze
says,
them out.
whatever voting system you use, it's the worst one of all, apart from all the others. I mean, it's one of those, isn't it? Anyway, listen, we're out of time practically, so we've got to come back in a moment with my final nomination, and it might not surprise you to know that it's over the other side of the Atlantic. So, welcome back to Plank of the Week, and I'm afraid it's got to be the man of the moment. There's a NATO summit on right now. Keir Starmer's over there as well. It's Joe Biden. Joe Biden. I mean, a man who gets more and more doddery with literally every day. He's obsessed with the fact that he now is refusing to stand down. And in fact, he said as much at the weekend. He gave an interview to, I think, CBS, or ABC, which was so softly. And he said, basically, only God can stop me.
All right, Mugabe.
You know, and he was like, all right, OK, then, mate.
That might happen.
It might.
By this point, God is voting.
I think his ticket might be punched.
But we've got basically all sorts of clips to show you, so I'm just going to show you them in order. How about this from George Clooney, who's joined the merry throng of people who think he should just give it up.
The fact is that you and I are sitting here today because this will be your last week of employment. This is not an assessment of your productivity. You gotta try not to take this personally.
Well, I just had a bad night.
I just had a bad night. And that, of course, is the line that they're putting out about Joe Biden. Just had a bad night. This is all happening after the debate, of course, when everybody saw that he could barely string a sentence together.
It was horrendous.
Couldn't remember
it was a
how
car
to
wreck
finish
of a debate.
his
What was I
sentences.
saying a few minutes ago about journalists need to pull their socks up and start doing journalism again?
Well,
because they have had 5 years to scrutinise this. Everyone knows that man is ancient. He's a fossil. He's a relic. He's doddery. He's senile. It's been obvious to everybody.
And it has been, but now...
They've all sort of played along, swept it under the carpet, told the lie, fed the lie, until it got to the point where he went into that debate and you actually just can't cover that up anymore.
You really can't. And here's his press secretary, Jean-Pierre.
Hold on a second. There's no reason to go back and forth and be in this aggressive way.
Miffed around here about how information's been shared with the press corps about him.
What do you missed about? What do you missed about?
Everything he just asked about.
And then every time I come back and I answer the question that you guys asked.
Correctly, you didn't have to come back and clean it up.
I never answered the question incorrectly. That is not true. I was asked about a medical exam. I was asked about a physical. That was in the line of question that I answered.
This was also during the press conference where she admitted that a neurologist had been to see the White House on quite a few occasions, but apparently hadn't found anything wrong with Joe Biden.
No.
He's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
You know, he's not suffering from Parkinson's disease. He's not being treated for Parkinson's disease, and he's not got any plans to get Parkinson's disease. I think that was pretty much.
Even though a Parkinson's expert apparently has visited the White House 9 times in the last 12 months.
Right.
Yeah.
For
no reason.
No, for no reason.
For no reason.
I think it was last week on Planks where we had the clip of him staring while he was talking for 17 seconds without actually blinking.
I really see in him, I've had grandparents that had dementia and you see when you're talking to them, you see this confusion that they have. They're in the middle of a conversation and they're sort of looking around thinking, where am I? What am I talking about? And it's clearly very frustrating. And I really see him doing that. It's so clear that his head is not in the right place right now. And it's cruel, but the only people that are going to be able to convince him to step down are going to be his family members.
Right.
Like
Jill ain't going to be doing that anytime soon.
But hasn't George Clooney now thrown him under the bus?
Yeah, he has.
2 weeks ago, George Clooney helped raise millions of dollars for his campaign. 2 weeks later, he
Democrats
said,
now,
actually, now I don't think he's fit.
No, exactly. Democrats now are really annoyed because it's so late in the day that if they do have to pick a new candidate, they won't be able to get any financing for them.
Boo-hoo. Are you telling me the Democrats didn't know this guy was
No, this is my point.
They've left it too late.
I think the sad
thing. But hang on, I'm
go
talking
from
about
close.
ordinary voters who are Democrats, who are registered Democrats, who are going, well, this is the whole thing is ridiculous because they should have pulled the guy ages ago.
Yeah,
but
I think the sad part is the fact that Jill, his wife, is keeping him well.
Lady
and truly
McBiden,
propped up.
they're starting to call her.
Yeah, I mean, it's just horrendous.
The
So
big
cruel.
ventriloquist with the hand up the skeleton's backside is actually Obama. That man, when he ended his presidency, never left Washington. You can only do 2 terms as American president. He didn't go get the golf clubs and the slippers. He stayed around, and it's him who's keeping old Joe in power.
Did you see him guiding him off the other day?
Obama wants his 4th term.
Well, it's a bit like Tony Blair, isn't it, and Keir Starmer. Same kind of idea.
Yeah.
Well, here's a clip from my show from earlier this week.
For 5 additional strategic air defense systems.
What? Ukraine. I mean, you can't figure out what he's saying.
No.
It's like all the words just roll.
It's kind of sad, actually.
Did you see the clip about him talking about speaking to someone's wife? And it really
Yes.
doesn't sound like
and
he
it
said
sounded
that.
like the F
Something
word,
else.
didn't it?
Yeah, doesn't it?
But we all know that didn't happen, for obvious
true.
reasons. But no, I mean, I just think, how much more longer can it go on? I mean, I keep expecting to come into work every day. And at some point overnight, they've announced that he's not going to be running.
Yeah.
I was going to say he's dead.
Well,
I think there is a chance of that, sadly.
I mean, he's not. The point is, he's not that old. In fact, 81 is not that old. We were talking this week about Trevor Kavanagh, the Sun columnist, who's also 81, who's retiring from sort of covering elections.
And he's definitely got all his marbles.
And he has never been sharper and never been brighter. And as you say, Chloe, we've all got relatives, some of whom deteriorate much younger than 81.
Didn't I hear
he's
that
definitely in a bad way.
Nancy Pelosi, who's older than him, told him to step down as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's evident within there, but from what I've understood from my contacts, it's the cabal behind him.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are propping him up. Keep him in, get him in for the next term. Obviously, the VP will then step in, and then they could do it.
But unfortunately, the VP, the VP
probably
at the
worse.
moment is an even worse choice.
The thing is, there are other people clearly running the show for him, whilst he's not capable of doing anything. And what annoys me is when I talk to people who are pro-Biden, they say, no, don't worry about his age, because there are competent people running the show behind him. And I'm like, but that's not democratic. If I don't know who's actually running the country.
It's like the Manchurian
Anyway,
candidate.
listen, I've got to rush something in because we're nearly out of time. Just before we go, and before I decide who's going to win Plank of the Week, I've got a little bit of surprise for you.
this resource. So as part of the survey, we also found that...
That was on my show this morning, right? Right. For some reason, inexplicably, you know how when you're on air, you're going through stuff on Twitter and you're kind of looking for bits of information, you're looking things up. The Twitter has now changed, apparently, as I discovered today. Yeah. Because when it hits on a video, it plays it. Start playing it. Yeah. Right? Now, everybody was listening thought, why is Mike Graham playing Celine Dion? You know, My Heart Will Go On, or whatever it's called, from the Titanic movie. And it was actually a football clip because it was the England goal, but the music had been put over and I couldn't stop it. And I was going like this. And the reason they obviously put that up there was because I was just sitting there kind of going like this and it wouldn't stop.
So, Mike, are you nominating yourself as a plank?
I actually am. I think I may have to. I know I didn't even win it when I did the concrete scenario, right? But I was in it. So I'm thinking, I think I might actually just nominate myself.
Is this a first?
I think so.
Yeah.
Wow. What do you think?
I think it's quite well because Thames Water is...
I don't think you're a worthy winner.
You don't take one for the team.
No?
No.
No.
No, see, Chuck wanted me
You've got to do something far more spectacular than that.
Well,
if there is any element of democracy to this show, I think we'll say no.
Well, in that case, does it not have to be a collective Labour Party?
Yeah.
Labour government, because there's so many people in
First
here.
of many.
First of many. I'm giving it to the Labour Party. I'm giving it to the Labour government. The first week, you've won something already. Plank of the week. Well done, Keir Starmer. Well done, Anneliese Dodds. Well done, Angela Rayner. And very well done to you guys. Thanks very much indeed. Alex, Will, Chloe, Russell. We'll see you again soon. That was Plank of the Week. We'll see you next week.